Hey, New York Giants fans, welcome back to the Empire State Sports Report. I'm your host, Adrianna, also known as New York Giants fangirl on social media. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Justin Penik of Talkin Giants, and we are going to talk through camp and maybe some expectations that we have for the season. So welcome, Justin.
What's going on? Thank you for having me on. I've been a big fan of you for a couple of years. You're a grinder. You put in the work. You're in the trenches certainly, and you know it's pretty hard to do, like when you don't have the access and to stand out like that, but certainly you do it. So I've been a big fan of you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was excited last year. We got to meet in person at training camp. And I want to talk about the hot dogs at training camp because I know with that coming up, obviously very excited about that. I think you said last year was 22. Is that right? And is that the same goal?
It's the same goal if they, well, I mean, maybe more because what do they have? 12, 13 practices, including that joint practice. I think I'm going to be going to 12 of them. So if it's two every morning, then it's 24.
And you don't split them up. It's not like one in the morning, one after. It's
no, because you know the training camp day. It's You get in there in the morning. The practice is about 2.5 hours, because they warm up and they play patty cake for most of it. And then you really got to pay attention to the 11 on 11 that you like the good out of the 2 hours that you're there. It's probably like 20 to 30 minutes of like good practice time that you actually can like quote unquote report on. And then after that, you're making recaps, you're making videos, whether you're writing or doing whatever. So then by the time you look up and you can breathe, it's maybe, mid-afternoon, and it's like, oh, I got to eat. So those two hot dogs, they last me in the morning, and then they last me until whenever I eat dinner at around 5, 6 o'clock. So I'm an old man and I eat dinner at 5, 6 o'clock. I get angry if I don't eat it after. So those two hot dogs, like people think it's a joke, but it's also kind of low-key essential to fuel my day.
Yeah, it gets you through 2 meals, which is very impressive. So that alone is worth it.
Also, hot dogs don't taste the same now. If I have them in the afternoon or at night, I'm turned off by them at night. But there's something about in the morning in 85-degree heat in East Rutherford that it just gets me.
It's part of the experience. I might have to give it a whirl this year so I can really enjoy it.
2. It has to be 2.
Has to be 2.
You can't just settle with 1.
I'm like a ketchup only on my hot dogs, though. Are you like ketchup, pickles, the whole thing?
Society has peer pressured me into liking mustard because the first year I would just do nothing and ketchup, and like, are you a child? Like, ketchup is for children, and I'm like, all right. Like, that's one of the reasons why this has sustained itself for so long is because people have so many opinions about hot dog etiquette. It's crazy. Like, I wouldn't have kept going if people didn't have such drastic opinions on what I do with my hot dogs. Then I would just stop, because it originally started as a protest against the Giants because they're like, you can't film. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna film myself eating hot dogs, and that's hashtag content. And then it's turned into this thing. So I have been peer pressured by society to like mustard, but if I had it my way, I'm just ketchup. So I agree with you.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Mustard, I like honey mustard, and that's the extent of it. I'm not putting mustard on my burger, on my hot dog, nothing. It ruins it.
It's too, I'm sorry for listening on a podcast, but it's just too, like, I'm making a face and you know what I'm talking about. It's just too, yeah.
No, it's not it. So, all right. So with that being said, training camp is like a week away. Very excited. I know a lot of people are talking about like the Cordell Flott and the, what's his name? Tay Banks competition, offensive line versus defensive line. One of the battles that I really want to see, especially on one-on-ones, and I don't think we're going to get it, but I hope that Dable has talked through and does it, is Theo Johnson versus Abdul Carter. Do you think that's going to be an option at camp? Because I don't know if you listened to Giants Huddle. Theo Johnson was on recently. He's talking about, him and Abdul Carter, their relationship, that's what their coach did. They pit them at Penn State, one-on-one battles against the whole team. And basically we're like, this is how it's done. So I'm like, if I'm Dable and I hear that, do it. I want to see that.
Well, let me ask you this too, because this really depends. This goes to Abdul Carter's versatility. Are you putting Theo Johnson and Abdul Carter up like in a typical, like a pass set? Like they're going one-on-one and Theo Johnson is pass blocking Abdul Carter? Or are we talking about Abdul Carter lined up as an off-ball linebacker and trying to cover Theo Johnson in like a one-on-one period? I think that's a really key question on like what position group is Abdul Carter going to be in? I think he's going to spend all of his time with the outside linebackers and the edge rushers. But something to keep an eye on early on and throughout camp is Abdul Carter navigating over to that inside linebacker room? Because then if that's the case, then you're talking about like the one-on-one pass coverage of Abdul Carter and Theo Johnson, and then possibly you can even see that. So are you thinking solely Theo Johnson, Abdul Carter pass blocking, or Abdul Carter, Theo Johnson, and like pass coverage and one-on-one running routes?
I was thinking pass blocking because that was what I initially saw in my head when Theo Johnson was talking about it.
That makes sense.
My assumption was that was how they lined them up at practice. So I was like, oof, that would be fun to watch. But I'm open to both. Would love to see both.
Yeah, for sure.
You think there's any possibility Dable does it in that pass blocking type of scenario?
I don't. Typically, I don't know if the tight ends are joining the like O-line, D-line 1v1s, but if there's an opportunity for it, I'm all for it. Competition typically breeds good things. I would love for, this second year in that last year's draft class certainly looks good, but this 2025 draft class is bringing a moxie, a confidence, and a swagger and an attitude that I really like. So if there's any opportunity for it, I'm all for it. And they ran the most competitive and intense camp last summer that we've ever seen. Even it was a wake-up call for the Lions that came into East Rutherford, where the Lions were like, we just got our ass kicked through a couple days. And even Dan Campbell talked about that during their playoff run, that the Giants did well. So hang the banner. Giants beat the Lions in training camp practices.
Best off-season team.
Yeah. But so I hope we see an intense camp, and hopefully that can maybe be part of it too. Abdul Carter and Theo Johnson.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I also think some of the other battles that we can talk through will be interesting too. But one of the problems that I have with this Giants team is that exactly that. Last year, the Lions come in, are not expecting the Giants to beat up on them. The Giants give us all this hope that they're going to be good and then crash out week one. What do you think the disconnect is? Do you think it stems from them not playing in preseason? Because that's something that I know we're all worried about injuries, but I feel like at this point, this could be Dable's last year. You have to play them in preseason. It's unacceptable that they have a good camp. We get all excited, and then week one, they get blown out because they don't play anything since then.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, where the last 2 years, there hasn't been week one games that have been that demoralizing, where I think in like that Dallas game, I think that was it. That was the season. Like they were expected to come out, make the playoffs, contend for a playoff spot, capitalize on what they did in 2022. They added speed, they added Waller, added Hyatt, all this kind of stuff. Extended Jones, kept Barkley. So run it back with that crew, and then to get punched in the mouth like that, where you're expected to now start punching in the same weight class as Dallas, to lose 40-0, that really did feel like the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And then last year wasn't necessarily the end of the year. They were 2-3 after that Seattle game, but it's inexcusable to come out 2 years in a row. And I don't care how good the teams are. Obviously Minnesota turned into a much better team than we thought, but there's no excuse in the NFL, I think, for any team to get blown out that much, especially week one, when you have so long to prepare for an opponent and so long to kind of get ready for the season. So I don't know what the answer is. I would like to see them play more in the preseason. Now, do I need to see Andrew Thomas play in the preseason? No. Do I need to see Dexter Lawrence play in the preseason? No. Brian Burns? No. But, dare I say, Darius Slayton's a pretty durable player. Would I like to see him play a little bit in the preseason? Yeah, to get a connection with Russell Wilson. Even if Malik Neighbors is healthy, I would like to see him play a couple series. Like there are certain guys on this team that preseason would benefit them, because the ramp up to whatever the regular season has been the last 2 years for the Giants has been awful. They just have not looked like a team that is ready to play. So whether that is the answer is the preseason, or their answer is even how they operate during practice in the meeting rooms, as a coaching staff, they cannot be going into this summer in terms of how they prepare for week one as, it's business as usual. they have to hopefully take a step back. Why are we getting off to these slow starts in the month of September and October? Why does it take us a month for us to start playing our best football? And they need to figure that out this year, because we cannot go through a season where, through the first 4 weeks of the season, we're basically sitting back as fans being like, the season feels kind of over. That cannot happen this year.
Especially for the coaching staff. I mean, we can get into that a little bit later, but what's bizarre to me is that the first year under Dable in 2022 is they made some mistakes week one, which we all expect, right? But of course, they end up winning that Titans game on the last minute field goal, and it ends up changing the trajectory, I think, of that season. But that year, they looked somewhat prepared. They weren't a disaster. They kept the game close, and obviously they won. So I am so curious, like, what has changed the last couple of years. And I just hope that, like you said, Dable is going back to the drawing board and saying, whatever we've done the last couple of years, it's not worked, and that has to change. Now, whether or not John Mara has guaranteed him another year as coach, it's unacceptable for your team to go out there, whether it's home or not, looking as unprepared as they have the last 2 years in a row.
Now, here's the answer organizationally that they'll say. Because last year, it was clear that as an organization, they made Daniel Jones enemy number one. If the 2024 season is going to go awry, it's because we don't believe in the quarterback. I mean, that was clear right away, where I was listening the post-game radio show, the Giants in-house personalities that they have, the post-game show, Bob Papa, Carl Banks, everything like that. What I heard, the things I heard them say about Daniel Jones after week one, this guy may not have it. And I'm like, these are things I haven't heard in 5-6 years. And we're suddenly bringing it up after just 1 week. We're typically, give them time. They gotta get adjusted, and it's just 1 week, and it's a long season. They were not saying that. So it was clear that, also from Hard Knocks and trying to trade up for Drake May, it was clear that as an organization, they view Daniel Jones as enemy number one. Well, now he's gone. They got rid of that contract. They're going to deal with the dead cap. They're going to deal with the dead money, and they have now 3 quarterbacks in this room that they could probably view as possible upgrades over what they've had the prior 3 years. So that's going to be their answer as an organization of like, what's changed? It's Brian Dable now has quarterbacks that, maybe Jameis wasn't handpicked, but certainly Russ is a guy that they've settled on as a starter, and Jackson Dart as the future, where eventually we see him later rather than sooner, because I don't want Jackson Dart walking into a situation where they're 2-8, they're 1-5, because that's not a good situation to walk into. I would like Jackson Dart and his ramp up to be pretty graceful, and that's one of my big goals for this year.
Speaking of Dart, what do you think we realistically see from him during camp? And I was talking about this with someone the other day, being like, I think everyone is going to have to temper their expectations, because I'm sure he's going to get some snaps with the ones. Yeah. And, if he throws a couple interceptions, or he looks like, he's still taking some time processing, whatever, I think everyone needs to relax and not freak the fuck out that he's going to be the worst quarterback ever because he threw an interception during training camp. But I think we'll see him a bit with the ones. What do you think his snaps are going to be like?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they break it up. I think he's going to be sprinkled in, and I think that's the approach that Brian Dable has said that he is going to take, and that he even took during the spring. I don't think it's going to be. Maybe he does get more snaps with the ones as time goes on. But I don't necessarily know if I would like that, because I want the Giants to be prepared for the season with Russell Wilson. If they had 2-a-days, and if they practice as much as they did 15 years ago, like let's sprinkle in everybody. But they don't have a ton of time. Like I said, there's 2 hours of practice, but out of those 2 hours, those 2.5 hours, there's maybe 20 to 30 minutes of like live reps that are like good quality practice time. That's it. They're really not. They're not practicing like they used to. So there's such limited time on the field. So that's why I think it's just so important for Russ to get acclimated. But Dart is going to be sprinkled in there, and I want that. And what I expect to see from Dart, I expect to see he's probably going to take sacks. He's probably going to hold on to the ball. He's probably going to try and run around. I would like to see him be willing to throw the ball down the field. Be willing to do that. Be willing to make mistakes. If Dart throws some interceptions and he throws them deep, I'm not stressing about it. I'm not. If he's throwing some interceptions on some quick reads, all right, a different story. That's stuff you got to work on. But I want to see a quarterback that's willing to take chances, that's willing to get the most out of the players that's available. And even the backup skill position players are not going to be bad. Having Zach Pascal and Lil Jordan Humphrey, if he's lined up at wide receiver, and Jalen Hyatt's probably going to be with some of the backups as well. There's some good UDFAs like Bo Collins. Dalen Cambry was making plays all spring too. So there's going to be some fun weapons that he's going to have to work with backups as well. I want to see a willing quarterback where even if fans and everybody may be freaking out that he's making mistakes and holding on to the ball, if he's willing to do the things that we haven't seen the last couple of years, that's what I want to see from Jackson Dart. And I will view as progress, because he is a quarterback that is a work in progress.
Yeah. And he actually said that on Giants Huddle, that he thinks that one of the reasons why he will be successful in the NFL is because he is aggressive and he's not afraid to throw the ball down the field. And he said that one thing that he learned very quickly throughout minicamp, which I'm excited to see if he's able to transfer this to camp, is that in college versus the NFL, those tight windows are so much tighter in the NFL, and you can't get away with the throws that you used to make. So that's something that I want to see if he can do, especially during preseason, if we see more of him. But I think overall, the fact that we have 3 new quarterbacks is bringing a whole new life to training camp. I think fans who maybe never really had an interest or didn't want to go because Daniel Jones are finally like, all right, we have some hope there. So I'm excited to see Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston just get out there and kind of wing the ball around. But what are your expectations for Russ camp this year?
Yeah, I don't know what to, or here's what I expect from Russ, because this is just who he is as a player. He throws a really good deep ball, and that's not even just Giants fans saying that he does. Like, numbers back it up. The phrase moon ball has been repeated time and time again. Moon ball is when a ball stays up in the air for at least 2.5 seconds. And he throws that really well, and he throws it near the sideline. Like I said, that Russell Wilson's quick game is his deep game, because it's going to be snap and it's going to be release. The ball's going to hang up. It's going to go 20 air yards in the air. And then guys on the sideline, Slayton, Neighbors, and then even Jalen Hyatt. Like, if there's one quarterback in the NFL that Jalen Hyatt can kind of carve out a role for himself in an offense, it is Russell Wilson, because I feel like that's what Hyatt did well his rookie year, especially if he hasn't developed the other aspects of his game. He at least can run in a straight line well on the sideline. So that's Jalen Hyatt's role kind of carved out for him. So Russ is going to do that well. Worried about Russ taking sacks. Worried about Russ kind of operating the normal quick game of like, hey, everything under 10 air yards, right? The short, the short part of the field, intermediate part of the field, he's going to throw well. I think it is going to be better. And I think it is going to be a breath of fresh air from what we've seen the last couple of years. Because Russ, even if Russ can only throw the deep ball well, I think it will inevitably open up the rest of the offense and make things easier. Because 2022, nobody really knew what to expect from this Mike Kafka, Brian Dable blended offense that, they're moving away. All right, so we're moving away from Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So now what is this Giants offense going to look like? And you saw they had a very run-heavy approach, and they operated the quick game very well, and Daniel Jones's legs very well. And nobody could really figure it out in 2022 besides the Eagles. And then the Eagles really figure it out, and then the rest of the teams kind of follow suit there. We're going to stack the box. We're going to dare you to throw the ball deep, and Daniel Jones just did not do it, and it frustrated the hell out of Brian Dable. If Russell Wilson does that well, and he does it kind of how he's done throughout his NFL career, and even as he's declined in his NFL career, he still has done that well and thrown that deep ball well. It's going to open up Tyrone Tracy. It'll open up the run game, whether that be Cam Scatterbo, Devin Singletary. Hopefully it opens up things underneath so Theo Johnson can have even a better year himself. That's what I'm expecting from Russ. Even if he isn't perfect as a player in the quick game, intermediate game, whatever, if he could still throw that deep ball well, that's going to open everything else up. I'm expecting and hoping that he starts 13 games this year, and then the final 4 games that's when Jackson Dart has that nice little runway and ramp up to getting his NFL action. Ideally, we don't see Jackson Dart at all, but I just don't think the Giants season is going to go that way. I'm hoping they're 5-8, 6-7, around that range after 13 weeks. And then Jackson Dart, like I said, is going into a better situation than what they would have been, let's just say, if they were 1-5, 2-8, or another bad record where you have to make a decision to change a quarterback.
You think Dable would if Russell Wilson is playing well enough, we all know the schedule is really tough, right? If they're 6-7, you think Dable is willing to make that change to Dart?
Yeah. I think it'll depend on it'll really depend on a lot of things. Like if the rest of the NFC East is not in a great spot, then maybe. But there's also there's three other good teams in the NFC East that have playoff aspirations, right? Cowboys roster isn't what it once was, but that Commanders over-unders at 9.5 and the Eagles over-unders at 11.5. So those are really good teams. And I think if they're and this is all hypothetical, but if they're at that 5-8, 6-7 range, the phrase that Dable has used in the past, and especially he used it last year, and he's used it the last 2 years with DeVito and Tyrod and benching Daniel Jones and putting in Drew Lock or DeVito, he's used the phrase, well, I'm looking for a spark. And I think that can be the justification of, I want to put a spark within the offense. If Russell Wilson was signed for 2 years, if Russell Wilson was signed for 3 years, then I'd be like, no, if they're 6-7, they're going to ride with them. This is a 1-year quarterback, and they just traded up for a guy in the first round. And I think they would view that as an ideal time to put him in. And really, I would view that as almost zero expectations. If they're bad and they put in Jackson Dart, there's going to be an expectation for him to look good. But if they're 6-7 through 13 weeks, 5-8, I'm viewing that as, yes, that's a success. I still think that they've proven, Brian Dable, Joe Schoen have proven that through the first 13 games with such a hard schedule, if they win those 5 games, I view them as their jobs are safe and we're heading in the right direction. And then it almost doesn't even matter how Jackson Dart does within the last 4 weeks of the season. But if they do not survive the first 2 months of the season, if Jackson Dart is put into a situation where he has to perform well, then that's just bad for everybody involved, including Jackson Dart. And I do not want that for Dart.
Yeah. Well, so with that being said, I think that this offseason, there were multiple conversations between Mara, Schoen, and Dable. And I think that once they got Jackson Dart and everyone agreed that this was the move, that Mara said to them, you guys have through the 2026 season. Because Mara said 100 times over, we did everything we could to screw up Daniel Jones. And I think that he was at the point where he was like, I went through the fire and I stuck up for these guys and I'm keeping them, that if they really believe in this guy, it's not going to be a Daniel Jones 2.0 situation. And I'm going to give them the time to make it work with him, especially knowing that they have Russ, that he's probably not going to play that much this year. What do you think?
I hope you're right, because I think Dable has done a better job than Joe Schoen. And I think if anybody is going to go this year, it is going to be Brian Dable. And it's a similar fear as to what we felt last year. Everybody was like, you gotta try and treat these guys as a package deal. And it did feel like from what John Mara maybe had to say, and maybe even reading between the tea leaves and things that we heard towards the latter part of last year, I think it may have even been Joe Schoen that maybe saved Brian Dable's job. I don't think John Mara has been thrilled with Brian Dable, especially like publicly coming out and saying, well, I don't think you should be the play caller. And it's like, has that even been discussed? And John Mara basically did anything but fire Shane Bowen during his, it wasn't even a presser. It was just, he was on that indoor facility and he was talking. Everybody thought after that press conference, oh my God, they're going to fire Shane Bowen. John Mara just ripped him to shreds. And then they didn't fire him. So I think Mara definitely has more problems with coaching than GM. I think he views a coaching overhaul as something that may be a little bit more, and I think this is even based on precedent too. I think he views changing a coach as something that is easier and more doable than changing over the GM and changing over everything and every single aspect and facet of the front office and the organization. So I hope that these two guys, they are attached to the hip, and if they if you're willing to give Shane until next year, also give Brian Daboll until next year, 2026 as well, especially because like Jackson Dart is a Daboll guy. Like that very much felt like a Daboll pick, even if, hey, everybody in the front office came to a similar understanding, and you have to. One guy can't just take responsibility and be like, this was my decision. It's Joe Shane's quarterback as well, because at the end of the day, he should have the final call on everything, especially when it comes to drafting your quarterback and your first round pick and trading up for that guy. So I hope that they're together. I hope that we don't end this year with Joe Shane looking for a new head coach for the Giants. I hope that's not how we end this year.
Yeah. And maybe I'm too optimistic on Mara with this, because I did think that at some point he probably was going to split them up and fire Daboll. And I agree with you that he probably thinks it's just easier to get rid of the coach. But I'm like, didn't you learn anything from Dave Gettleman and his coaching mistakes? Like, you cannot do that all over again. It's the same thing with Daniel Jones. Like, if you claim that you learned from the Daniel Jones thing and we're not going to do that again with Jackson Dart, then you have to have that same mentality when it comes to the GM coach scenario. Like, it's so easy for someone like me to say, and I know it's easier said than done to deal with keeping these guys and going through the whole rigmarole of a new hiring process and whatnot. But like, if you want to win, if your ultimate goal is to win games, like, it's really not that hard to figure that part out of it, I don't think.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think he's, afraid is a strong word, but I think he's very wary of making a very difficult decision of starting over. And clearly, because I think he viewed like Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, this is me starting over. This is me getting it right. This is me leaving the George Young tree finally. Mm-hmm. And viewing that, especially after, what would have been 3 years, and it's like starting over again. And then it's like, well, if this was a total reset for me, then what the hell am I supposed to do now? So it's a tough decision. Hopefully we don't get there. This Giants roster should be, I don't care what the schedule is. We're in year 4 of this roster. This roster has players. It has depth in certain areas that they really need to capitalize on. With the quarterback position, if you have one quarterback that goes down, the season shouldn't just be over anymore. With the defensive line, like there should be certain standout areas. Malik Neighbors, there should be certain standout areas of this roster that carry you to places. Where they go, I don't know, but they should be better than what they have been.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, we talk so much every year that the NFL is really a week-to-week league. Like, in the off chance that during the season opener at home against the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is hurt, it's obviously not the same game, So will we ever get that lucky? Probably not, but you never know when it comes to injuries and things like that. Like, I don't think anyone thought in 2023 that Andrew Thomas was going to go down and our whole season was going to shit the bed. And the same thing happens a year later. So with that being said, what do you think? I know you did your 53-man roster prediction, and I forgot if you said whether or not you think James Hudson is going to make it the backup tackle. So, and then the Marcus Bowe is the backup right tackle. What do you think is the scenario that Evan Neal beats out GVR? Because I think he's going to get more reps at right guard than left.
Yeah, I don't know if Evan Neal's going to win the job, especially not right away. But what Neal has going for him is that Neal could be a good run blocker. Maybe even a kick-ass run blocker. If he could start leaning on people at guard, which it's a lot, he's unbalanced. He's an unbalanced player. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit easier to lean on guys at guard than tackle, where you need footwork, you need that athleticism. He has the size. You would think he has the strength. So if that's his path, in my opinion, and I don't view like this Giants interior offensive line, John Michael Schmitz is a good run blocker, but I don't view Greg Van Roten and John Runyon as necessarily these kick-ass run blockers. I view them as more of like finesse players and, kind of jack of all trades, master of none, especially Runyon. But if Evan Neal can stand out as a run blocker, that's huge for him. And then I think you're in a spot where maybe you even have an offensive line rotation, which I have never been an advocate for that. I like 5 guys playing together, 5 guys that have chemistry, 5 guys that move together. And this is something under a Carmen Brasillo offensive line. That offensive line last year moved very well together. That was something that stood out when his time with the Raiders. And then even last year, like during camp, I'm like, I don't know if this line's going to be good, but at least they're moving well together. And I think you saw that at certain times last year, especially as a pass blocking unit through the first 2 months of the season. But that could be a path which they explore. If they want, hey, we're going to go under center, and this is going to be a Cam Scatterbo, Devin Singletary drive where we're going to try and pound the rock and emphasize the run a little bit more, then Evan Neal can come in and maybe be part of a rotation with Greg Van Roten. I don't know. That's something I've been thinking about. Like I said, I haven't advocated for that in the past because Joe Judge would do it. Even Brian Dable did it with Nick Gates and John Feliciano, and it would drive people crazy because it's like, I think Nick Gates is better, but neither here nor there. That could certainly be a possibility of what they do and how you can get Evan Neal on the field, because I don't know if he's going to be as good of a pass blocker as Greg Van Roten, but maybe he could be a better run blocker, and then that's how you can get both of them on the field at the same time.
Yeah, I would be interested to see that. I mean, I still have a little bit of hope in Evan Neal. I haven't completely written him off. And maybe it's just because it's his last year. Maybe it's because they finally moved him over. I'm like, whatever. If he ends up getting a couple snaps and look decent, I'll be thrilled with that. I don't want the Giants to re-sign him or do anything crazy and make him the starter if he's not better than GVR. But, if he's good enough that, like, God forbid GVR goes down and he can handle his own, it's a great gift. I'll take that for Evan Neal.
And that's also why for linemen, it's very youth-centered, where you mentioned Evan Neal. Now, he's not necessarily young, but he's inexperienced at guard. He's never played it in the NFL. Marcus Bowe, which you said they're going to primarily put him at tackle, but maybe he has inside flexibility. Jake Kubis, UDFA last year, he's been practicing snap of the ball, center/guard. So that's about 9 guys when you include the starting 5 and James Hudson. And James Hudson, like he's the swing tackle. Financially, they committed a good amount of money to him for a swing tackle. So James Hudson there. That's 9 guys. They've carried 9 guys every single year heading into the month of September. 9 offensive linemen in 22, 9 in 23, and 9 in 24. That's where I think, like, adding a 10th and Aaron Stinney, I hope that they carry him. I don't want them to cut Jake Kubis. I think Jake Kubis has earned a spot on the 53, especially when they don't really technically have a backup center. I think their plan for backup center would just be to move one of the guards over to center, like Greg Van Roten would just snap the ball. But think of how inexperienced the guard spot is and the interior is with Jake Kubis, with Evan Neal, and then maybe Marcus Bowe slides to the inside. And I don't think Josh Azudu's making the team. So I would have Aaron Stinney as that 10th offensive lineman, and then they do something different that they haven't done through the first 3 years of their, of the regime so far.
Yeah. When I did my roster prediction, I had Aaron Stinney making it because I liked the idea of having 10 offensive linemen. You have a specific backup for every spot, but you have guys that can rotate. So I don't know if they will do that this year. If they end up doing 9 like they've done in the past, I think that's fine too. But it does worry me sometimes that they are so focused on every player playing different positions.
Well, yeah, there's no backup center.
I'm like, doesn't that worry you a little bit? Also, like, I was listening to Justin Pugh and he was, answering questions mostly from Giants fans about offensive line stuff. And his preference, if Andrew Thomas, God forbid, knock on wood, goes down again, he said, I would keep Illuminor at right tackle and then start James Hudson or whoever, someone else as the left tackle instead of moving that player over. Then you've got, a couple plays or whatever it takes for him to adjust. Now you've got essentially 2 new positions that are kind of, slowly working their way into it as opposed to only changing.
I think they would do the opposite though.
You think they would move Illuminor?
Oh yeah, I think they would. I think in the case of, and yeah, this may happen. In the case of AT going down, I think they slide Jermaine over to the left, and then maybe they don't, because James Hudson has had experience at left, but James Hudson is not. Left tackle is so important. Where, like, I would rather have somebody at right tackle as a little bit of a liability. At right tackle is a little bit of a liability than left. So I think they would, maybe even after 1 or 2 weeks of experimenting with James Hudson at left, and be like, oh, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And then they're going to put Jermaine at left. I think eventually they get to that point if AT is out for an extended period of time. If he's out for an extended period of time, then Jermaine eventually makes his way to the left. If AT's out for just one or just a couple weeks in that bad scenario, then that's where I think they will just, all right, James Hudson, you're at left, just survive these 2 weeks before the lineup is reset.
Yeah. And then if they move Illuminor to left, you think they have Bo start at right tackle or Hudson?
I think Hudson. They financially committed way more money than maybe a lot of people would think. They signed him to a 2-year contract, $12 million. And next year he has now next year they could cut him. They could say $5.5 million and only eat about $2.3 million, but he has a cap hit of $4 million this year and then $7.8 million next year. So that's not a small financial commitment. I feel it wasn't that the contract that Jermaine Illuminor got to begin with the Giants, like a 2-year deal.
Yeah, it was a 2-year. I can't even think about next year because I look at our basically entire offensive line and I'm like, we are so screwed. But that's a problem for next year, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, and then Illuminor signed a 2-year deal, and his total cap hit from last year and then this year is $13.9 million. That's basically the same contract that Illuminor signed. And James Hudson is a backup tackle.
Wow, interesting. And Illuminor was basically the starter from day one once they brought him.
Yeah, and the crazy thing, he's good. Like he's a good player. His presence last year, if they didn't bring him in, or let's just say they stick with Evan Neal, I think that's one of the main reasons why the offensive line, after Andrew Thomas went down, didn't get to like 2023 levels of bad and unplayable.
Mm-hmm.
It still was operable. Was it as good pass blocking wise, and especially even run blocking wise? Like that span between weeks 5 to 10, Tyron Tracy was like 4th or 5th in the NFL in rushing yards. I have that stat if you want to talk about it. But I think Illuminor's presence is one of the reasons why that line didn't get to a point where it's just total disaster and we can't do anything. So I think he's important, and I think he's going to get paid. I mean, he's looking at not only the rest of these offensive linemen that are getting paid around him in the NFL, he's also looking at a bunch of his Giants teammates getting paid and a lot of the free agents coming in getting paid. And he's like, you know what? I'm pretty damn important too. If I'm going to be here, you better reward me. I'm sure he's thinking that, and we'll see what the financials wound up being. But I view him as an important player. So.
Yeah, that's when I think about like the future of this offensive line after this year. We have 1 or 2 more years with Andrew Thomas. I think 1 or 2 with JMS, and then what? Everyone else, and then you have Bo, but I don't know what their plan is there. Is he going to be guard or tackle? Evan Neal's gone, Runyon's gone, Illuminor's gone, GVR's gone. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's even a question right now. Like the rest of the roster, you could look at like, all right, they maybe have a plan for quarterback. All right, they have they have wide receiver kind of squared away with at least their outside receivers, and Slayton's is signed to a contract. Neighbors is here. Theo Johnson's a rookie. Like the defensive line is kind of set. Your secondary is definitely kind of set for the next couple of years, you would presume. Mm-hmm. And it's that very important spot and that important position group of offensive line that I do think like if this Giants, regardless of if this Giants season is a disaster again, or if it's around 500 ball, I think this offseason it's going to be about, all right, we need to invest everything that we have into the offensive line. And that's interior. It could be right tackle, but I think especially at the interior offensive line, that is going to be priority number 1 heading into even next offseason. I think regardless of how this season goes, that is going to be the talking point that we're going to have.
What do you think is a realistic prediction for this year for record-wise?
They have to be 6 wins minimum. Mm-hmm. 6 to 7. That's where I'm at. Either 6-11 or 7-10. That's my hope. It's my hope. They're only favored in 1 game on their entire schedule. That's the Saints game. It's the only game that they're favored in, but they just have to find a way to win more, because everybody talks about culture every year. I bang my head in the microphone anytime the narrative and the conversation starts switching to culture and winning and losing in November and December and blah 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 blah. I hate it. It makes me want to claw my eyes out. You want to know how you establish a good culture? It's by winning football games. I mean, that's it. There is no locker. You want to know how you solve all the locker room issues? You win. You want to know how you save everybody's jobs? You win. You want to know how you make fans happy? You win. That's it. That's really it. You know, everybody over-examines it and talks around and round, culture this, culture that, locker room this, locker room that. Everything is fixed by winning. And they don't have to win 10 games. They don't have to win 11 games. If they're around that 6 to 7 mark, telling you it's going to feel so much better. There's a world where the Giants don't have to be bottom 3 and everything, especially offensively. Mm-hmm. You could be 20th. You could be 16th. Like that's okay. You could be 22nd. That's okay. Not everything has to be, all right, we're 30th in points. We're last in explosive plays. Like there's a world where average is going to feel so damn good. And that's what every year, that's what I want. But especially this year, that's what they need. That's what they need. And that's how you show progress. And that's how you establish culture.
I also think if you're a guy like Dexter Lawrence, Darius Slayton, Andrew Thomas, who have been here forever, and you see what Jackson Dart does in practice, Russell Wilson wins you 6 games, and then, I don't know, maybe we see Dart the last couple games, maybe we don't. But you start to feel like, I would think those players are starting to feel like, all right, we're headed in the right direction now because we've got the quarterback who's going to lead us forward. We've got the secondary. We've got the right amount of talent that we haven't had for the last couple of years that we can finally get there. But I was laughing to myself when you're talking about culture because the NFL posted a video the other day of Ravens players doing the fumble drill where they're spraying them with the hose and they have to dive into the ground and hold on to the ball. And I went back and I found the video of Joe Judge doing that. And I will never forget the excitement that all of us fans, the players, the way that they were hyping him up. I was like, we got our culture guy, right? Yeah. This is the guy. He's a player's coach. The players love him. The fans love him. He's involved in everything. We're going to be a good football team.
And even after that year where they, the COVID year, and they go 6-10, and all right, they're fighting tooth and nail for the NFC East title. So, okay, looking back on it, well, maybe not something that should have got that excited about, but I don't care. Like I will not apologize for how excited you get about winning a little bit and getting a little bit of momentum. And even after 2020, we're even 6-10 and pathetic NFC East champs, the Washington football team that year. And then even 2022, that's also a year. Like I looking back on it, probably not the best thing in the world that they won 9 games, but you know what? I will not apologize for a playoff win. I will not. I will not apologize for winning football games and winning a playoff game because it is that type of stuff that establishes what you need to do as a football team. In my opinion, I think they made bad decisions. I think they went away from their process of, they declined Daniel Jones's 5th-year option. They clearly didn't want to pay Barkley. So, and they kind of pivoted in those certain directions based on what they did in 2022 to keep those guys probably around longer than maybe they wanted to. But alas, here we are. We got to show something this year. Something. Even average is okay.
Yeah.
Put it on a shirt.
I think you make a good point, though, because in 2022, right, we won 9 games, we won a playoff game, but none of the Giants' stats were amazing that year. Daniel Jones didn't even throw for over 25 touchdowns. So, but we still won games and still showed progress.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up with this. Who are 2 players, one on offense, one on defense, you're most excited to see in camp?
The player that I'm just most excited for in general is Malik Neighbors on offense, but that's not okay in camp.
Yeah, we might not see him much in camp.
Probably not because, man, I hope we do. He was running around San Diego. Malik Neighbors is going to have 1,500 yards this year, by the way. And I don't feel like that's crazy. Do
you know what the over-under is on him?
Depends on the certain book, but I think it's around 1,250, 1,275.
Okay.
I over. Like, I think it's going to go. I think he can have the same number of catches, maybe even less catches than he had last year, but more yards. Just because this year for Malik Neighbors is quality, not quantity. That's my catchphrase for Malik Neighbors this year. All right, one player I'm excited to watch. Honestly, it's the rookies. I'm going to say Marcus Bowe and Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo wasn't really participating in the spring, but I'm just excited to see because we really haven't heard anything about Marcus Bowe outside of maybe he doesn't look that awesome, but fifth round pick, day 3 guy, player that was 65th on the overall consensus board of the draft this year. So, value-wise, the Giants got great value and is still there. So I'm excited to see where he lines up and how he looks and if he's super athletic and if that can stand out during camp. On the defensive side of the ball, Paulson Adebo.
Okay.
Paulson Adebo. I love cornerbacks that can make plays on the football. And we just haven't had that since like early days of Adoree Jackson and, even James Bradbury. But I think Paulson Adebo is better than those guys that like making plays on the football, pass deflections, passes defensed, forced incompletions, and even interceptions. So I am really looking forward to see Paulson Adebo running out there. I think he's cleared. I think he should be good from the broken leg. So if he can make some impressive plays, especially when training camp is so much of like a passing camp, like a glorified passing camp, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. They're going to be throwing the ball deep a lot. And Paulson Adebo going up against these wide receivers is going to be super fun.
Yeah. If we get to see Neighbors, him and Neighbors will be very fun to watch.
Oh, it's going to be a treat. It's going to be a treat. Last year, people were talking about, Deontay Banks versus Malik Neighbors. I kind of felt like Deontay Banks just trying to keep up with Malik Neighbors and just getting fired up when Malik Neighbors is just killing him. But I actually think there could be like decently good battle. I think Neighbors is still going to win it, but decently good battles between Adebo and Neighbors. So
good practice. And like Burns, I think it's him always says, iron sharpens iron. So
love it.
Let's hope it shows on the football field this year for once.
Average.
We'll take it with me. All right. That's the line this year. All right, Justin, thanks for joining. Tell everyone where they can find you on social. And I know everyone already knows the podcast is Talkin Giants.
Yeah, Talkin Giants. Talkin Giants on everything. At Justin Penik on everything. And then even if you want to check out some of the national stuff that I do, we do a lot of trivia over on JM Football, and we're going to be launching. I'm going to be launching a new like video essay series this year too. So we got a couple videos done. We're going to try and front load a ton for the regular season. So JM Football, Talkin Giants, that's where you can find a lot of what I do. Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Anytime. We'll see you eating hot dogs at camp.
Oh, please.